Hello and welcome to a live deprogram with Keri Smith. I'm your host. Today is a beautiful, beautiful day in Texas. It feels like summer after all of that cold weather. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful Friday, January 31st, and I hope you're having a good day. Quick announcement: if you are in Texas, let me add this. You can see this here on the screen. We're having a deprogram meetup tomorrow in Grapevine, Texas, and we're doing this to coincide with a lot of people being in town for the Nitty McPurley retreat. So there's going to be a lot of nittas in town, and we're going to meet up during a break in the schedule tomorrow. We're meeting up at 12:30 at the Sweet Paris Creperie, and you don't have to be a knitter. You don't have to be part of the retreat to come. If you're a deprogram fellowship member, if you're someone who's, a friend of the show or friends in the chat, or, you are welcome to come. We're going to have crepes and coffee and conversation. Starts at 12:30. You don't have to be prompt, and we'll be there for a few hours. I'll be there for as long as there are people there. Probably we'll have fun. So I'm so excited. I hope that you guys will come if you're in town. Okay, so book club pick. Kiwi, thank you for reminding me. So Mystery Chris, if you guys like the Wednesday, every other week we do a show called Popped Culture with one of my friends, Mystery Chris. It's a nighttime show. It's a fun show. We have fun. We just did one about it was part 2 of the rise and fall of late night. And there's a book he's been recommending to me forever, and I think he gave me a copy of it already. I have it, so I have to read it. We're going to do this book that Mystery Chris suggested. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And I haven't picked the date yet. It'll probably be towards the end of February, so you have a month. But go ahead and get the book if you want to be in the discussion. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And I trust Mystery Chris's recommendations and opinions. If you watch the show, you might also know that he has good taste. So that's what we're doing. February book club. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. Oh, I see Randy in the chat. 2-ish. 2-ish. Let me tell you a joke. What time does Tiger know? Oh no, my dogs. Oh no. It's the mailman. Hold on. Okay, this is the joke while Tiger's barking. What time does Sean Connery get to Wembley? I think that's the joke. 10-ish. You get it? 10-ish. I probably ruined it. That's my husband. If he's listening somewhere, he's like, "No, that's not it." Tiger, come. Oh, Rodney says Wimbledon. Yeah, I always get that wrong. Wimbledon. I knew I probably ruined it in other ways. Sorry. This is my doggy. Look, we're just having a relaxed stream today, right? We got off to a hectic start. My husband's on the road doing some music, and I got 3 doggies in this house. But you know who the troublemaker is? Mine. Mine is the one. He's got to bark at every cat. If he even suspects that there might be a cat on the porch, he's got to tell me. The mailman, any delivery guy. Come here. Shh. Shh. Are you good? Okay. Okay, we're back. Wimbledon. Okay, that's it. That's the joke. Okay, let's move on. Sorry. This chupacabra, Adam says this chupacabra is not going back to Mexico. To Mexico. No. Tiger's not. Tiger's got his papers, so he's good. He wasn't even born. Tiger was born in Kentucky. You should know. He's part redneck. That's where he's from. So, okay. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about two of the biggest executive orders that Trump has done. We just did a video about all the wins, all the Trump wins on Monday for the first week, everything he did in the first week, which was exhausting to even think about doing because it was a long video just to talk about all of it, everything that he did. And so I had a lot of fun going through that, though. And I know some of you in the chat and the comments said you enjoyed it too, just going through every little thing he did and how much was accomplished and zero buyer's remorse. I'm very happy with what I voted for, and to see that he's taking steps immediately, even on day one, to deliver on the promises that he made. So since we did that video on Monday, he did 2 more executive orders, which are they're huge. Again, it's hard to rank everything because I'm so happy with so much of what he's done, pulling out of the World Health Organization, pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, all of the firings, the federal hiring freeze, kicking, DEI out of the government, firing all these DEI people within the government, all these offices of DEI, just on and on. There's so many things that I'm happy about. But two of the biggest that I voted for, this is what I wanted, and this is what we are getting, just happened this week. And they both have to do with woke ideology. They both have to do with the harms and the dangers of my old belief system of social justice ideology, of woke ideology. One of them is an executive order that seeks to end racial indoctrination of children in K through 12 education. And the other is an executive order that seeks to, obviously, to ban the mutilation and the sterilization of children in the name of gender affirming care, whatever you call it. It doesn't matter what fancy Orwellian name you give it. It's mutilation of children. It's, in some cases, sterilization of children. It's experimentation on children. It's abuse of children. And I said last year, I got to speak at the Austin City Council when they were voting on one of these transing kids bills. And they had asked people, we knew that there were going to be a lot of people there, a lot of woke cult people speaking on behalf of this thing. And so the call went up for people to come out and speak against it. And so I went to speak, and in that short little clip, which you can find on the channel, one of the things I said is, I'm confident, like, we are going to ban this barbarism against children in all 50 states. Even in California, we're going to ban this one day. It will be banned. It is abuse of children. It's already illegal. You guys just think it's a nice little trick it's a nice little cheat to trying to get around the law by renaming something. Oh, this kind of physical abuse and mental abuse and emotional abuse and this kind of physical abuse is called gender affirming care. Children can consent to this abuse. Nonsense. So we're going to ban it in all 50 states. We're going to ban it just like the progressive countries who have done systematic medical reviews about the practice, just like they've done. They've banned it for children. And we're going to do that here too. And this is the beginning. There's still a ways to go, but this is the beginning. This executive order is perfect. Yes, Rosa, praise God. So we're going to read it. Now, I've had all kinds of attacks lately. Let me tell you, if you're out here speaking what you believe to be true, like I am, on any kind of social media, you're probably seeing this too in your comments from different people and strangers and some people but the attacks, it's like spiritual attacks or whatever you want to call it, the darkness is coming from all sides now. Like on any given day, I'm getting hateful comments from the woke, which is not new. I had this woman in my comments 2 or 3 days ago saying, woke is just about empathy. It's so sad to see that you don't have any empathy. That lady, it's not about empathy. It's about abuse and control and power. I was in that cult for 20 years. Like, here's a video clip if you'd like to watch it. Usually they don't want to watch it, but here it is. Gently, I'm telling you, you don't know what woke ideology is, even though you're in the cult. But so I get that. I get the negativity and the criticisms and stuff from the woke, and that's nothing new. But now I'm also getting it from what is being called the woke right, whether you like that phrase or not. I don't like it. But the racists, the fascists, the misogynists, the like incel misogynists who say they're on the right. And that's growing. There aren't as many of them, but it's growing. And I'm getting that every day now, where in their bios, they're putting, look here, it's just like, the woke were easy to identify because they started putting all of their cult stuff in their bios. So in their bio, they would put all of their identity markers, right? And they would tell you like, I'm a Black, queer, disabled, trans, fat, bipolar. It was just like every different identity, marginalized identity group they could claim. And it would just go on in their bio. And then they would do their pronouns. That's another way that they would do their pronouns. Okay, so these people, these incels or whatever you want to call them on the right, the ones that the movement that's starting to percolate up online and is gravitating towards influencers like Elijah Schaffer, Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, some of these others that are pushing this ridiculous revision of history, this actually overt hatred of Jews. And so some of these people in their bios, they put markers too. And one of the things they're calling themselves heritage Americans. That's a new phrase for me. Heritage American. And you look it up or you try and figure out via the context, like in what context are they using that? What do they mean by it? Let me figure out what they mean by it, by how they're using it. They just mean white people. I'm a heritage American. They're like, America's for heritage Americans. And they also are putting in their bios a heritage American. They're calling themselves theology fascists or whatever, theocracy fascists. They have Christ as king in there. A lot of them LARP as Christians. That they put fascist in their bio. They tell you. They put white nationalist in their bio. Many of them do. And but heritage American is a funny one. Anyway, so I'm getting hate from those guys too. And so there's just been a lot of this from all corners. All of that to say, there've been the first kind, the one that's been happening for years, the woke people who don't understand. I am still getting comments from those people. I got a few this week. So we're going to go through these executive orders for you to help you understand what they're about. If you're here, because I guarantee you haven't read them, have you? You probably haven't read them. The media told you they're awful and they're terrible. And so you just believe that. I know what it was like. I used to be in your cult. You don't actually go to the source material. Let's start with the most important one, in my opinion. I don't know. It's hard to rank these. This is the executive order protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. Executive order from the White House, January 28th, 2025. And first of all, in the title, perfect. Don't mince words. You never use the cult language. You never give them a win by using their language, because they make up that language to control you, to control your thought, to control the conversation. It's a power move. Don't ever use their bullshit Orwellian terms. And he cuts right to the matter of like, what are we actually talking about here? Oh, we're talking about chemical and surgical mutilation of kids. That's what we're talking about. And by the way, if your gender affirming care doesn't do that, if it doesn't chemically and surgically mutilate, well, then this shouldn't apply to it, right? If it doesn't do these things, then why do you care? because you know it does these things. You know it does these things. That's why you're pissed. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1, Policy and Purpose. Across the country today, medical professionals are maiming and sterilizing a growing number of impressionable children under the radical and false claim that adults can change a child's sex through a series of irreversible medical interventions. This dangerous trend will be a stain on our nation's history, and it must end. I'm going to highlight this for a second. Let's just talk about a few of the things that we've covered on Deprogrammed in the past few years, things that we know are happening. And if you're on the left and you claim this isn't happening, you're an adult. Go use Google, look it up, look up the studies. Look up the studies where, they are castrating little boys as young as 16. I believe there are a few cases younger. They are doing double mastectomies on girls as young as 13. Go and look up the case studies. Look up the detransitioners who are suing, who had these procedures done to them when they were children. Most of you don't know a thing, a GD thing about what you're talking about. And you want to come into conversations and you want to try and mount this false horse of moral and intellectual superiority when you know nothing. So go do the research. And if you still want to defend your position after you have the facts, great. But at least then you'll know what you're talking about and you'll be someone that we can converse with. These things are happening. Some of the things we've covered on this channel, if you read the WPATH files, the CAS report, and I've got several videos on the WPATH files, and I've got some on the CAS report. Go and watch those if you don't know what's in them, or better yet, go and read the report yourself. And so there's stuff in there about the little girls that they're giving testosterone to. It may possibly be linked to cancer. And the doctors are on record in the WPATH files acknowledging that there might be this link. They don't know for sure because all this is experimental, right? But they're acknowledging it in their communications with one another and still putting little girls on testosterone. When it comes to little boys, these things are irreversible. These are the things you guys say don't happen. They are irreversible. Cancer is irreversible. With the little boys, the president of WPATH, the president, Marcy Bowers, is on video confirming and saying that, yes, 100% of little boys in Tanner stage 2, that's age 10 to 11, 100% of those little boys that they give puberty blockers, 100% of those little boys are never able to achieve orgasm in adulthood. They cannot perform sexually. It is chemical castration. That's what it is. That is permanent. So when you guys go and repeat all their talking points that they know are lies, Marcy Bowers knows it's a lie, that puberty blockers are just a pause button. That's a lie. They know it's a lie. They get you to go out and repeat it because they know you're not looking for information. You're not even listening to them when they're admitting this stuff. That's irreversible. When you castrate a little boy, that's irreversible. When you cut the breasts off of a little girl, that's irreversible. And some of the stuff that came out in these files that we saw, and some of the whistleblowers who have defected from these child, gender transition clinics, gender clinics, some of the defectors, the whistleblowers have come out and said, told us heartbreaking stuff about how little kid, like one of the whistleblowers said that one of her patients, this child who had a double mastectomy, afterwards wasn't happy with it and asked if she could get her breast back. Can you imagine? Because these are kids. They're still developing. Their minds are developing. Their understanding of reality is still developing. And in our society, we've always protected children in a different way then we treat them differently than we do adults. We recognize, our law recognizes that they are not adults. And so our law has always protected them in ways that we don't protect adults. We don't allow children, our law does not allow children to consent to sex with adults, to driving cars, to buying guns, to smoking cigarettes, to drinking alcohol, to getting tattoos. Our law recognizes that they can't consent to these things. And yet, in the past few years, you guys have let a bunch of psychopaths manipulate you to the point where you're out there as an adult, they've manipulated you to such a degree that you're out there saying, yeah, you think that children should be able to consent to having their breasts cut off for life. Children understand what that means, don't they? Or being sterilized, never being able to have children. They understand. You know who knows that they don't understand? The doctors doing it. In the WPATH files. Go and read the WPATH files. Watch the videos. Read the transcripts. These doctors are joking with each other on camera. We've covered it on the show. They're on video calls with one another, laughing about how these kids don't understand what it is they're consenting to. And they're joking about how, well, at that age, they're like, oh, I don't like girls. I'll never want to have kids. Because they're children. And you're somehow, you want us, you've been manipulated to the point where you believe that they are capable of making a decision at 9, 10, 11 years old of deciding if they want to be able to have kids or not. They're not capable. That was a bit of a tangent, but I can hear the woke person in my head, the former, social justice warrior that I was. I can already hear what you're going to say about this first paragraph. You're going to be like, that's not happening. Well, if it's not happening, then I guess you shouldn't care about this executive order, right? Because it's banning something that's not happening. It is happening, and you know it's happening. And deep down, you know it's happening, even if you haven't done the research. We'll continue. Countless children soon regret that they have been mutilated and begin to grasp the horrifying tragedy that they will never be able to conceive children of their own or nurture their children through breastfeeding. Moreover, these vulnerable youth's medical bills may rise throughout their lifetimes as they are often trapped with lifelong medical complications. Yes, they are, and some of them die. We've covered the story of Lucas, the young man who died from complications after he was castrated and then had a fake wound, a permanent wound, a hole, they call it a neo vagina created. And his colon was leaking out through his new neo vagina, this wound. We've covered his death. They're often trapped with lifelong medical complications, a losing war with their own bodies, and tragically sterilization. Accordingly, it is the policy of the United States that it will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another, and it will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life-altering procedures. Okay, so this is just the first step. Now, this is saying no federal funds, basically. The U.S. is not going to, we're not going to take taxpayer dollars to cover so-called transition for children. This is a first step. Definitions. For the purposes of this order, the term child or children means any individual or individuals under 19 years of age. The term pediatric means relating to the medical care of a child. The phrase chemical and surgical mutilation means the use of puberty blockers, including GnRH agonists and other interventions to delay the onset or progression of normally timed puberty in an individual who does not identify as his or her sex. The use of sex hormones such as androgen blockers, estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone to align an individual's physical appearance with an identity that differs from his or her sex. and surgical procedures that attempt to transform an individual's physical appearance to align with an identity that differs from his or her sex, or that attempt to alter or remove an individual's sexual organs to minimize or destroy their natural biological functions. This phrase sometimes is referred to as gender affirming care. It's Orwellian. It's just like in George Orwell's 1984, where the Ministry of Truth, you know what the Ministry of Truth does? They put out propaganda. They go back and edit history. The lead character in 1984, his job is to go through newspapers and edit the past, edit history to fit whatever narrative they're pushing today. They call it the Ministry of Truth, right? In 1984, what the Ministry of Love, do you know what that is? That's their war. That's their war apparatus. They call it the Ministry of Love. I say this because I know a lot of people on the left like to pretend that they read and they don't. This is probably true of most people, but especially on the left, I know this. You guys, you like to pretend that you read. You go to expensive colleges where you sometimes you like to lord it over others that like you're so educated. But it doesn't going to these days, going to an elite institution doesn't mean that you know more. A lot of times it means you know less. A lot of times it means you've been brainwashed and indoctrinated to believe things like there's no such thing as biological sex, or that being fat is healthy, you know, these crazy things that they're teaching. I know this. I went to an elite university. This is where I picked up woke years ago. This is where I was indoctrinated. I know this. And you guys don't. I know you don't read. I know you haven't read 1984. Go read it. Then it won't sting so much when somebody says that to you, because you're like, well, but I have. Go read it. That's how you fix that uncomfortable feeling that you have right now when somebody's calling you out for not knowing what's in the book. You go read it, then you don't have that uncomfortable feeling. Horny Alf is here. He says, I'm super smart. Hey, Horny Alf. Good to see you. Squat and Peace says that, and Animal Farm. Yes, and Animal Farm. Both of these books are so short. So, I mean, you really have no excuse. Go and read it. Animal Farm is, oh my goodness, is that applicable today? Especially during the COVID years. Okay, we're going to continue with this executive order. Section 3, ending reliance on junk science. Oh, this part's great. The blatant harm done to children by chemical and surgical mutilation cloaks itself in medical necessity. That's what it does. It lies. It cloaks itself in medical necessity. They do this all the time. It's a sociopathic ploy. They say it's necessary. It's necessary. If you don't mutilate and sterilize your child and turn them into a lifelong medical patient, if you don't do this, your child will kill themselves. This is what they tell parents. It cloaks itself as a medical necessity, spurred by guidance from the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH, which lacks scientific integrity. Yeah, WPATH is a hoax organization. Go read the WPATH files. It's a bunch of activists mixed in with the doctors who are pushing all this junk science. They know that they're doing experimentations. They even talk in there about like what they call the null surgeries, NULL, where they have some young people coming to them and saying, well, I'm non-binary, so I want you to make me neither. I want you to cut off my genitals and make me neither. And they're like openly talking about with other doctors and stuff about, well, I'm going to try this. What about that? Like they're experimenting. They don't know. They're like, what about like not putting the nipples back on? What about making them like a Ken doll down there? This is Frankenstein stuff. It is against the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm for all patients, adults too, but especially for children, to experiment on them without telling them it's experimentation. So it says WPATH which lacks scientific integrity in light of the scientific concerns with the WPATH guidance, agencies shall rescind or amend all policies that rely on WPATH guidance, including WPATH Standards of Care version 8. And within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall publish a review of the existing literature on best practices for promoting the health of children who assert gender dysphoria, rapid onset gender dysphoria, or other identity-based confusion. It is confusion. The Secretary of HHS, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, shall use all available methods to increase the quality of data to guide practices for improving the health of minors with gender dysphoria, rapid onset gender dysphoria, or other identity-based confusion, or who otherwise seek chemical or surgical mutilation. This whole section here, imagine this, leftists. You guys like to falsely claim that you believe in science. You don't. You don't. Imagine this. Imagine saying, hey, we're going to do a systematic medical review of all the available evidence before we start experimenting on children. Like, hey, we're going to do what the progressive countries have done, like Sweden and Finland and Denmark. And guess what? After they did those medical reviews, they banned it for kids. We've never done a systematic medical review here in the States. They're like, we're doing it. Section 4, defunding chemical and surgical mutilation. The head of each executive department or agency that provides research or education grants to medical institutions, including medical schools and hospitals, shall, consistent with applicable law and in coordination with the director of the Office of Management and Budget, immediately take appropriate steps to ensure that institutions receiving federal research or education grants end the chemical and surgical mutilation of children. Duh. Additional directives to the Secretary of HHS. The Secretary of HHS shall, consistent with applicable law, take all appropriate actions to end the chemical and surgical mutilation of children, including regulatory and sub-regulatory actions, which may involve the following laws, programs, issues, or documents: Medicare or Medicaid conditions of participation or conditions for coverage, clinical abuse or inappropriate use assessments relevant to state Medicaid programs, mandatory drug use reviews, Section 1557 of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, quality, safety, and oversight memoranda, essential health benefits requirements, and the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases and other federally funded manuals, including the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. It's the DSM. The Secretary of HHS shall promptly withdraw HHS's March 2nd, 2022 guidance document titled, this is a Biden thing, that they're like, hey, we're getting rid of that crap, that child mutilating crap. A guidance document titled HHS Notice and Guidance on Gender Affirming Care, Civil Rights and Patient Privacy. This is the kind of evil that was happening under the Biden admin. This is why scores, thousands, I don't know, tens of thousands. This is why countless liberals voted for Trump. I know I have some people who are still questioning. They don't understand. They want to know why. A lot of times in the US, the tribalism kicks in, and most people on the left don't care to know. But in my experience, people in other countries want to know. People in other countries are like, why would liberals vote for Trump? Why are liberals joining Trump's administration? Liberals like Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr. This is why liberals voted for Trump. Do you know how much evil, abject evil was happening under Biden? Mutilating, sterilizing kids, experimenting on kids, abusing kids. Of course we're voting for Trump. This was like number one issue. I know the economy was number one for most people. This was so appalling to me. It's like, this is my number one. I mean, I can't even, it just begs the question, like, what kind of world are we in where this was even a thing, that this was happening? It's like something out of a movie. Like, Like, the worst evil you can imagine is going on, and this one administration is pushing it. The Biden administration is pushing it. Of course, I'm voting for anyone who's not that guy. Of course. Okay, so they say that the HHS has to withdraw this BS gender affirming care document, and in consultation with the Attorney General, issue new guidance protecting whistleblowers who take action related to ensuring compliance with this order. Because that's the other thing is Biden's administration was going after doctors and nurses, whistleblowers who came out and said, "Look at all this crazy stuff that's happening." And then the Department of Justice was going after them and pressing charges because they came forward and were exposing this child abuse. TRICARE. The Department of Defense provides health insurance through TRICARE to nearly 2 million individuals under the age of 18. As appropriate and consistent with applicable law, the Secretary of Defense shall commence a rulemaking or sub-regulatory action to exclude chemical and surgical mutilation of children from TRICARE coverage and amend the TRICARE provider handbook to exclude chemical and surgical mutilation of children. Once again, if you're not chemically and surgically mutilating kids, then why does this EO bother you? Because you are, Blanche, you are. Section 7, requirements for insurance carriers. The director of the Office of Personnel Management, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, shall include provisions in the Federal Employee Health Benefits and Postal Service Health Benefits Programs call letter for the 2026 plan year, specifying that eligible carriers, including the Foreign Service Benefit Plan, will exclude coverage for pediatric transgender surgeries or hormone treatments. So once again, they're like, look, no federal employee is going to be getting coverage that includes the mutilation and sterilization of kids. Negotiate to obtain appropriate corresponding reductions in FEHB and PSHB premiums. And then these are directives to the Department of Justice. The Attorney General shall review Department of Justice enforcement of Section 116 of Title 18 and prioritize enforcement of protections against female genital mutilation. Remember this, leftists? Let me ask you a question, leftists, especially if you're a Gen X. Remember back when the big thing in the early aughts in the 2000s, a lot of us were fighting against female genital mutilation in other countries and doing letter writing campaigns. I worked for Amnesty International when I was at Duke. It's a nonprofit. It's one of these organizations that cares about human rights abuses across the world, right? And I would say it's gone very woke, like a lot of nonprofits have over the years. At the time, woke wasn't big yet. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was woke. It was always liberal. It was always left-leaning, but it wasn't woke. And this was a big concern, countries that did female genital mutilation. Well, flash forward to 2025, what are all the leftists supporting in the US? Female genital mutilation, and not just of women, but of little girls, of kids. How sick are you? That you got twisted up like that and you let them do that to you and you let them infect you with that evil where you would go out and support something like that. You got used, you got abused, you got played. How'd they get you to do that? It's horrifying. Your beliefs are horrifying. I know some of you, and I try to separate the person from the evil beliefs because I used to have evil. I used to be in woke ideology. So you may not understand the extent. If I know you in real life, you may not understand the extent to which I am horrified by your beliefs, but that you think it's okay to mutilate kids, to cut up kids. That's only because I try and view you as a unique creation of God, an image bearer who happens to hold some of the most vile, disgusting, evil beliefs imaginable. And that maybe one day you'll come to see them, the scales will fall off and you'll come to see those things for what they are. We'll continue. I told you this is when I knew this was going to get me worked up because, again, this was like my number one issue. I can't even believe that there are. I know people who support this barbarism, that things are so bad, the propaganda is so overwhelming, that I know people who I think have a good heart who still support this evil. It says, okay, we're going to convene states' attorney generals and other law enforcement officers to coordinate the enforcement of laws against female genital mutilation across all American states and territories. We're going to prioritize investigations and take appropriate action to end deception of consumers, to end fraud and violations of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act by any entity that may be misleading the public about long-term side effects of chemical and surgical mutilation. Yeah, they lie. They lie to these people, adults and children. They say puberty blockers are just a pause button. In consultation with the Congress, we're going to work to draft, propose, and promote legislation to enact a private right of action for children and the parents of children whose healthy body parts have been damaged by medical professionals practicing chemical and surgical mutilation, which should include a lengthy statute of limitations. This is excellent. It's not enough to strip these doctors and hospitals of their medical license. They need to go to prison. Because as mentioned, this is already against the law. The fact that we're having to make additional laws to say, hey, gender affirming care, if what you mean by that is mutilating and sterilizing and abusing kids, then yeah, that falls under existing abuse laws. Like, that's abusive. It's already illegal. Your doctors, the doctors should be in prison, the doctors who did this to children. Go after them. They're a threat to civil society. They're a threat to children. They have revoked their privileges to live free. They are a danger to society. That's where we put criminals and people who are a danger to societies. We put them in prison. We separate them from civil and polite society. Predators, we separate them out. They abused kids. They should go to jail. Prioritize investigations and take appropriate action to end child abusive practices by so-called sanctuary states that facilitate. These are these states that are like, come live here if you want to abuse kids. States like California. Hey, if you want to mutilate and sterilize your children, come here. Sanctuary states that facilitate stripping custody from parents who support the healthy development of their own children. Oh, that's the other thing sanctuary states do, is they take kids away from parents if the parents won't agree to let them mutilate themselves, go to a doctor, be mutilated and sterilized. They take them away, including by considering the application of the Parental Kidnapping Prevention Act and recognize constitutional rights. Section 9, enforcing adequate progress. Within 60 days of the date of this order, the heads of agencies with responsibilities under this order shall submit a single combined report to the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy detailing the progress in implementing this order and a timeline for future action. Look at these actionable things. You know, like all the Biden things were just like, equity and diversity and inclusion and gender affirming care, and then there's like a lot of times when you read through woke stuff, you're like, what does this actually say? I mean, there's all the woke ideology and the buzzwords and all the stuff they're pushing in terms of what people believe, but what does it actually say? Like, a lot of times the woke don't have, there's not a deadline or like what are you actually doing? It's like those jobs, those make work jobs where people go in and you're like, what do you really do for a living? And they can never really explain it in a way that makes sense. Like, I was like, I don't think that you have a real job. I think you get paid to pretend to be working. There's a lot of that. Especially like the kind of jobs that millennials coming straight out with these degrees where they know nothing, but there's a lot of those kind of jobs. Anyway, I digress. The assistant to the president for domestic policy shall regularly convene the heads of agencies with responsibilities under this order or their designees to coordinate and prepare for this submission. I'm going to stop it there because the rest of it is just, where they're wrapping it up at the end, the legalese. This is an excellent executive order. I'm so happy with this. It's a good first step. It doesn't mean this is all ending today or yesterday, but it's a good first step. Thank you, Trump voters. Thank you, Trump voters. Thank you to Trump. Thank you to Trump's administration. Thank you to every person who has stuck their neck out there and said something about why this is wrong and done their part to change the culture. I don't care if you're someone who sticks your neck out there in a very public way, like my friend Billboard Chris, who's done a lot to change hearts and minds on this issue. Or if you're someone who's done it in a more private way in conversations with friends and family, or maybe at your workplace or wherever. I don't care. If you've said something about it in any way, if you have pushed back against this evil that the US has been committing against children, thank you. Thank you, because you're part of the reason why we are here today with this executive order. So I have a lot of emotion for you, a lot of positive emotion for you today. Yes, he is. Billboard Chris is a warrior. Yes, he is. Ellie has a great comment. You're right, Ellie. Ellie Mitchell says, unfortunately, those who detransition are often branded the enemy by people who are still transitioning. Yeah, they are, which is hard when you have personal experience and see others going down that path. It's true, because they will. It's again, this is how it's like a cult, Ellie, and I'm sure you have similar thoughts about this, but it's like a cult in that they love bomb you when you're doing what they want, an approved action, right? It's whether it's transitioning or speaking words that support transition, or whatever it is you're doing that supports the ideology. They're like, they will love bomb you. And if you are a kid who's transitioning, they will make you a celebrity. Like, you will get all the attention, the accolades. Think about how attractive that is to a kid who's having trouble fitting in. Most kids go through awkward phases, but then if you add to that kids who are gender nonconforming, kids who are autistic, kids who have suffered some kind of abuse, kids who are going through other, like, mental health comorbidities, have other issues going on or issues at home. That is so attractive. That is so attractive to them, to be to anyone who would be going through that as a child, to suddenly be put on this pedestal and everyone's praising you and giving you positive affirmation and talking about what a hero you are and how brave you are and how special and beautiful you are. And as Ellie says, those kids who later on are like, this was a mistake and regret it, well, then they have to deal with that a lot of times alone. They become a pariah. All those same people who put them up on a pedestal and love bombed them, now it's like it's like sociopaths. Sociopaths will love bomb too. Narcissists will love bomb too, and then they'll put you on a pedestal and they'll tear you down from the pedestal. It's called devaluation. So they start devaluing you. And the second you're like, this was wrong and this was bad, and especially if you're brave enough to speak about your experience publicly to try and prevent other kids from going through the hell that you went through, if you try and speak about it, they will try and tear you down. Like, they will add to everything you're already going through, all the emotions, the regret, the shame, whatever it is that you're going through detransitioning. But now you've got this whole community that lifted you up, tearing you down. That's what they do. I'll tell you, if you're one of those people who's gone through that, it's going to make you incredibly resilient. This is a bit of a, I don't know, life advice I would give my younger self. having gone through a different kind of building up and tearing down, but still, it's like when you go through those things, you will come out strong on the other side. That's the silver lining. It in the Christian tradition, if you look at scripture, Christians look at it like this, like in the Bible, there's all these verses where God talks about, um, that God disciplines the children he loves, like just like a father disciplines the children he loves. It doesn't mean discipline like punishment. We think of discipline, sometimes people think, oh, punishment. No, discipline as in training and teaching and making stronger and loving. And so I think of it as like when you go through those trials, you are being disciplined, you are being made stronger, you're being put through the fire, and you're going to come out on the other side like a diamond, right? That's gone through the fire. Like you're coming out stronger. Ellie Mitchell, it's great to know there are people like me that are getting a platform. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Ellie, she says, I stopped hormones just over 5 years ago now and thankfully narrowly avoided having surgery. Girl, hit me up. I think you might be. Sometimes I talk to people on Twitter and I forget screen names and stuff. I think I was talking with you. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe it was someone else. But if you're interested in having a conversation about it, I've interviewed people of detransition before, but it's been a while. But if you are interested in sharing your story, I'd love to talk to you. So probably the best way to get a hold of me, send me a DM on Twitter and I will make a point to go in there and look at that inbox today or tomorrow. Um, Thank you. Thank you for being willing to even share that in chat, even if you don't want to talk about it in a video. Randy. Hey, Randy Wallen, for $10. Thank you for the super chat, sir, for supporting Deprogrammed. Randy says, good start, but the monsters that allowed and promoted evil versus our most innocent won't be deterred. They will withdraw to the shadows and plot for another day. Remain vigilant. Be wary and wise as serpents. I 100% agree. It's a great start. Let's keep going. And this always happens. They will regroup. They will change the words. They do this as soon as you do a law that's like we're banning gender affirming care, they're just going to change what it's called, right? So that's why you have to be very specific about what you're like, no, okay, we're going to say what it really is. We're banning the mutilation and sterilization of kids. All right? I don't care what you call it. You're going to come up with a new word for it? Fine. It's already banned because it's mutilating and sterilizing kids. Like, you have to be vigilant. Super Based. Hey, Super Based. Good to see you. Member for 7 months. Super Based says YouTube has the 1984 audiobook for free by Author Lane. Oh, what a great tip. You guys, if you haven't read 1984, or if you haven't read it in a long time, like since you were in school, read it now. Oh my goodness. It's so good as an adult. When you've gone through some life experience and you can it's so much more meaningful. It's not that you couldn't understand it when you were young, but you understand it in a deep way now because you've seen things like this unfold around you. So go and listen to the audiobook for free. I find a lot of audiobooks for free on YouTube. And I didn't know this one was up there, but that's great. Thank you, Super Based. Okay. Let's read the other one. I want to get through both of these without doing another 3-hour video. Let's say we're going to do it, guys. We're doing it. There was so much I wanted to talk about today. The confirmation hearings are happening. I wanted to talk about JD Vance, but I've got Monday's videos coming up, and maybe I'll do a few extra ones next week because Trump's doing so much good stuff. I'm like, how I got to do more. It used to be I could do 2 live videos a week. It's fine. Now I'm like, there's too many things that are interesting that going on that I want to talk about or have thoughts about. I kind of used to be like, well, I'm not going to do a video unless I have thoughts. But now I'm like, but I have thoughts about a lot of things. Which one are we covering? Okay. This is the other executive order that specifically has to do with my old belief system, woke ideology, social justice ideology, if you will. And this one is about the racial indoctrination. And so this is also huge. The first one we did is about surgically and medically interfering with kids. Okay, this one is about mentally and psychologically, and I would argue even spiritually. Both of these are about spiritually interfering with kids. And this one is about ending that kind of mental interference and indoctrination. So it's called Ending Radical Indoctrination in K through 12 Schooling. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Parents trust America's schools to provide their children with a rigorous education and to instill a patriotic admiration for our incredible nation and the values for which we stand. In recent years, however, parents have witnessed schools indoctrinate their children in radical anti-American ideologies while deliberately blocking parental oversight. This I'm highlighting because I know people on the left, if you're watching, this is one of those things where they have already pre-programmed you and conditioned you to immediately go, that's not happening. It is happening. It is happening. And let me ask you, what do you think about America? What do you think about capitalism? What do you think about freedoms and liberties? What do you think about individual liberties? And I guarantee you a bunch of negative stuff just came to your head. And you have a bunch of critiques and criticisms and hatred. What do you think of the American flag, leftists? What do you think when you see the American flag on somebody's house? Is it positive? I know it's not. I know you guys think negative things. You say it, you spew it everywhere. You hate America. Do you think that you came to that conclusion on your own? Was it not influenced? Was it not influenced by this identity Marxism ideology spread through academia, spread through education, spread through social media, entertainment, corporate media? I was in so deep in woke that, I had all these prejudices that they have. And when I started slowly coming out of it, it was a real a lot of things. It was like doing things for the first time. I remember the first time that I wore a lot of red, white, and blue on July 4th. And the old me would have died before doing that. Do you know what I mean? But the new me was like, oh my goodness, it's okay to have this joy around celebrating your country. What, like the ideals, the values in our Constitution, in our founding. Like, it's okay to wear red, white, and blue and have fun and set off some sparklers. You know, it is so deep. This animosity towards their own country, our own country, is so deep, and a lot of it, the kids are picking it up. Well, my generation, I picked it up at university, but since then, that was in the late 90s, early 2000s. Since then, it's in our K through 12 education, so they're getting it at a younger age. They're being taught to hate America. They're being taught to hate individual liberty, individual rights. I'll continue. Such an environment operates as an echo chamber in which students are forced to accept these ideologies without question or critical examination. In many cases, innocent children are compelled to adopt identities as either victims or oppressors. This is it. This is woke. They're talking about woke. Woke is an ideology that teaches kids that the best way to look at the world is as a struggle for power between identity groups, and that we need to judge and treat people differently based on what identity groups they're in. And that way we'll reach equity one day. Everything will be equal one day, and the power will be redistributed between groups. Think about what that means, though. It means that you are teaching kids to be racist and sexist. Like, you need to treat white people this way and treat black people this way and treat women this way and men this way because, it's not equal and we need it to be equal. So men need to sit down and shut up and quit mansplaining, and they don't get to have an opinion on things, or especially on like abortion or anything. Like, they don't get to speak, and white people need to sit down and shut up and check their privilege, and they don't get to have an opinion on what racism is, and it's okay to treat them differently. And you can call men whatever you want. You can call white people whatever you want. It doesn't count because we have new definitions for racism and sexism. And what are those new definitions? Prejudice plus power. Again, it comes from this ideology that says the best way to look at the world is that the world is a struggle for power among identity groups. So they divide up in every identity group every kind metric of identity, race or sex or sexuality or size. That's when they do. Then they say, okay, within this, we're going to go in and name and identify which ones are the oppressors and which ones are the oppressed. And you have to treat people differently based on if they're in oppressor groups or oppressed identity groups. It's collectivism. It's not individualism. It's collectivism. It's racism. It's like white supremacy, just flipped. It's like sexism flipped. I mean, it is sexism. It is racism. In many cases, innocent children are compelled to adopt identities as either victims or oppressors solely based on their skin color and other immutable characteristics. In other instances, young men and women are made to question whether they were born in the wrong body and whether to view their parents and their reality as enemies to be blamed. These practices not only erode critical thinking, but also sow division, confusion, and distrust, which undermine the very foundations of personal identity and family unity. They get right to the heart of it. If they destroy the family, they can destroy society. The family unit is the building block of a community unit. The community unit is a building block of the city. In the city, if you got a healthy city, lots of healthy cities, then you might have a healthy state. And if you have a lot of healthy states, you might have a healthy country. But if you take it all the way down to that smallest building block of a unit, it's the family unit. And some people could say, well, you could take it down to the individual, true, but that's not a unit. What's the smallest unit? It's the family unit. Imprinting anti-American, subversive, harmful, and false ideologies on our nation's children not only violates longstanding anti-discrimination civil rights law in many cases, but usurps basic parental authority. For example, steering students towards surgical and chemical mutilation without parental consent or involvement, or allowing males access to private spaces designated for females may contravene federal laws that protect parental rights, including the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act and the Protection of People Rights Amendment, and sex-based equality and opportunity, including Title IX. Similarly, demanding acquiescence to so-called white privilege or so-called unconscious bias actually promotes racial discrimination. Yes, it does. And undermines national unity. My administration will enforce the law to ensure that recipients of federal funds providing K through 12 education comply with all applicable laws prohibiting discrimination in various contexts and protecting parental rights. And then they have definitions. The definitions in the executive order defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government shall apply to this order. That's another EO we haven't covered yet. We kind of touched on it in the video on Monday, the week one wins, but we didn't do it in depth, read through it. But he's just like banger after banger after banger. He's just cleaning things up. I love it. Discriminatory equity ideology means an ideology that treats individuals as members of a preferred members of preferred or disfavored groups rather than as individuals. Yeah. So that's what woke does. It says we should judge and treat people differently based on what identity groups they're in, whether they're in what we call an oppressed identity group or what we call an oppressor identity group. We're going to judge and treat them based on these group statuses, we're not going to treat them as an individual person. We're going to treat them as a white man. How do you treat white men? We're going to treat them as you treat a gay person of color, right? Like that's not who they are. They're an individual. Discriminatory equity ideology means an ideology that treats individuals as members of preferred or disfavored groups rather than as individuals and minimizes agency, merit, and capability in favor of immoral generalizations, including that members of one race, color, sex, or national origin are morally or inherently superior to members of another race, color, sex, or national origin. An individual, by virtue of the individual's race, color, sex, or national origin, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. An individual's moral character or status is as privileged, oppressing, or oppressed is primarily determined by the individual's race, color, sex, or national origin. Members of one race, color, sex, or national origin cannot and should not attempt to treat others without respect to their race, color, sex, or national origin. An individual, by virtue of the individual's race, color, sex, or national origin, bears responsibility for, should feel guilt, anguish, or other forms of psychological distress because of, and should be discriminated against, blamed, or stereotyped for, or should receive adverse treatment because of actions committed in the past by other members of the same race, color, sex, or national origin in which the individual played no part. I mean, they are nailing it. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have had this happen to you all the time. I had this woke white guy in my comments this past year. I gave him like a year of being a moron and being actually very passive aggressive. He was being rude. It was his behavior that put me off more than his bad beliefs. I gave him a year and he didn't change it, so I finally blocked him. But before I blocked him, I was getting this crap from him, this woke white warrior, that I'm supposed to feel bad. I'm supposed to feel guilty because I'm white. What? No. Well, have fun waiting for the day that I feel bad for being white. That's never going to come. It's so stupid. It's like saying, have fun waiting for the day that I'm going to feel proud of being white. That's never going to come either. I'm not like looking backward and saying, look what we white people did, whether it's good or bad. Like, no. I am grateful that I live in the country I live in. I'm grateful for the good that has been done by previous generations to get us to where we are today. And I'm also despondent about the evil that has been done in the past by previous generations. And here's what, more importantly, by the evil being done today. The evil being done today, mutilating, sterilizing kids, pushing this racist, sexist ideology on people. This is happening all around you today. You don't need to go to the past to dig up stuff and say, feel bad about that. There's a lot of crazy crap happening today. And primarily, it's the woke stuff. The very people pushing this evil are the ones who are like, feel bad about evil in the past while they push evil today. Unbelievable. An individual, by virtue of the individual's race, color, sex, or national origin, should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment to achieve diversity, equity, or inclusion. These are all the things that they're not going to allow, basically. They're not going to allow this idea that virtues such as merit, excellence, hard work, fairness, neutrality, objectivity, and racial colorblindness are racist or sexist or were created by members of a particular race, color, sex, or national origin to oppress members of another race, color, sex, or national origin. Or that the United States is fundamentally racist, sexist, or otherwise discriminatory. Patriotic education means a presentation of the history of America grounded in an accurate, honest, unifying, inspiring, and ennobling characterization of America's founding and foundational principles. A clear examination of how the United States has admirably grown closer to its noble principles throughout history. There's a great essay to read if you haven't read it before. It's the Frederick Douglass, his 4th of July speech. Let me just get the exact name of it. The left likes to bring this speech up on the 4th of July as reasons why they hate America, and all it does is tell me they haven't read the speech. Just like when they mentioned 1984 and they haven't read 1984. The speech is What to the Slave is the 4th of July. It's by Frederick Douglass, written in 1852. And if you read it, it is beautiful. It is basically him saying this part right here of this EO. It's Frederick Douglass saying, America's principles are noble. They are good. And we are not living up to them because of slavery. It's basically him saying, let's live up to America's principles. Let's fulfill the promise. Let's do what we say we believe in. Because what we say we believe in is good. It is about how America's principles are beautiful and noble. And it is a calling out of failing to live up to those principles. And you should read it. And so this says, an examination of how the United States has grown closer to its noble principles throughout its history. The concept that commitment to America's aspirations is beneficial and justified. The concept that celebration of America's greatness and history is proper. Social transition means the process of adopting a, quote, gender identity or, quote, gender marker that differs from a person's sex. This process can include psychological and psychiatric counseling or treatment by a school counselor or other provider, modifying a person's name, like calling Jane James, for example, or pronouns, calling a child non-binary, the use of intimate facilities and accommodations such as bathrooms or locker rooms specifically designated for persons of the opposite sex, and participating in school athletic competitions or other extracurricular activities specifically designated for persons of the opposite sex. Social transition, for the purposes of this document, does not include chemical or surgical mutilation. Okay, now we get into it. Ending indoctrination strategy. Within 90 days of the date of this order, to advise the president in formulating future policy, the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, in consultation with the Attorney General, shall provide an ending indoctrination strategy to the president through the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy. And it should contain recommendations and a plan for, number one, eliminating federal funding or support for illegal and discriminatory treatment and indoctrination in K through 12 schools, including based on gender ideology and discriminatory equity ideology. It should also include a plan for protecting parental rights. It should also include the ending indoctrination strategy submitted under subsection A of this section shall contain a summary and analysis of the following: all federal funding sources and streams, including grants and contracts that directly or indirectly support or subsidize this kind of indoctrination. A K through 12 curriculum instruction programs or activities, or in K through 12 curriculum. Also in K through 12 teacher education, certification, licensing, and employment. So it's like, we want a summary of any way in which taxpayer dollars, federal taxpayer dollars, are funding this kind of indoctrination in the curriculum or in the teacher training. Each agency's process to prevent or rescind federal funds to the maximum extent consistent with applicable law from being used by an ESA, SEA, LEA, elementary school, or secondary school to directly or indirectly support or subsidize this kind of indoctrination. I'm going to scroll down. It also wants a summary of any ways in which there's a violation of Title IX happening. Sorry, Title VI or Title IX in the schools. A summary and analysis of all relevant agency enforcement tools to advance the policies of this order. The Attorney General shall coordinate with state attorneys general and local district attorneys in their efforts to enforce the law and file appropriate actions against these K through 12 teachers and school officials who violate this law, who violate the law by 1, sexually exploiting minors, 2, unlawfully practicing medicine by offering diagnoses and treatment without the requisite license, 3, otherwise unlawfully facilitating the social transition of a minor student. This is huge. The Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy shall regularly convene the heads of these agencies to confer regarding their findings, areas for additional investigation, the modification or implementation of their respective recommendations, and other such policy initiatives. And then we get to Section 4. This is called Reestablishing the President's Advisory 1776 Commission and Promoting Patriotic Education. The President's Advisory 1776 Commission, which was created by executive order on November 2nd, 2020, to promote patriotic education, but was terminated by Biden. Of course, Biden's like, patriotic education, get the F out of here. We hate America, right? Like, get it out of here. Is hereby reestablished. The purpose of the 1776 Commission is to promote patriotic education and advance the purposes stated in Section 1, as well as to advise and promote the work of the White House Task Force on celebrating America's 250th birthday and the United States semi-quincentennial commission in their efforts to provide a grand celebration worthy of the momentous occasion of the 250th anniversary of American independence on July 4th, 2026. You guys, July 4th next year is going to be a banger. It is going to be fun. It's going to be the most 250-year anniversary. Within 120 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Education shall establish the 1776 Commission in the Department of Education. It shall be composed of not more than 20 members who shall be appointed by the President for a term of 2 years. It shall be made up of individuals from outside the federal government with relevant experience or subject matter expertise. This is what they should do. The commission will facilitate the development and implementation of a presidential 1776 award to recognize student knowledge of the American founding, including knowledge about the founders, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitutional Convention, and the great soldiers and battles of the American Revolutionary War. It's rewarding merit and a knowledge of history. In coordination with the White House Office of Public Liaison, coordinate biweekly lectures regarding the 250th anniversary of American independence that are grounded in patriotic education principles, which shall be broadcast to the nation throughout calendar year 2026. Upon request, advise executive departments and agencies regarding their efforts to ensure patriotic education is appropriately provided to the public at national parks, battlefields, monuments, museums, installations, landmarks, cemeteries, and other places important to the American founding and American history, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law. Upon request, offer advice and recommendations to and support the work of Task Force 250 in the United States Semi-Quincentennial Commission regarding their plans to celebrate the 250th anniversary of American independence. Facilitate, advise, promote private and civic activities to increase public knowledge and support patriotic education surrounding the 250th anniversary of American independence. The Department of Education shall provide funding and administrative support for the 1776 Commission to the extent permitted by law. Members, do you know the fact that they keep using 1776 and talking about the founding? It just makes me think of all those videos, those man on the street videos, where people go out and they interview young people and people in their early 20s, or I mean, sometimes it's people of different age groups, but a lot of times it's younger people, and they'll ask them questions like the very basic questions that you should be able to answer if our school system's doing its job, right? The most basic question, like, what year was America founded? And the answers are, they're funny, but they're so sad. They're so sad because these people can name every Jenner, like that celebrity family. They can name every Kardashian or Jenner, right? But then they're like, and what year was the US founded? And they're like, I don't know. It was a long time ago. It's like the 1990s. I mean, I seriously have seen this. So just the fact that they're repeating it is great. We get so many multiple impressions, like in marketing. There's this concept of multiple impressions where you're more likely to sell something the more impressions a person has of it. So if you've got if you work with a musician and they're putting out an album and you want multiple impressions, you want that musician to be on talk shows, and there to be newspaper articles and magazine articles, and maybe they do participate in some kind of award show or charity, and you get their face out there, you get the album out there constantly. And the best impressions are when people hear about the album from their friends, from someone else, because there's so many impressions that they're hearing about it from other people, and they hear about it on Twitter and the more impressions they hear, the more likely they are to buy that album. And the thing about the left is they've been very good at giving the public multiple impressions of certain things, of the propaganda, right? Multiple impressions of winter's coming, you're all going to die if you don't get the vax. Like, like that's really, remember when Biden said, it was very close to that. What did he say? A winter of death. What did he call it? Somebody remind me. I have to look it up. It made me think of Game of Thrones. Hold on. He said that because we were unvaxxed, that we were looking at a winter of severe illness and death. Anyway, they have multiple impressions of things like that, right? Get the vax, get the vax. Everybody was like, get the vax. Everyone. Every impression. Your mom was telling you, your cousin, some churches were telling you to, Fauci, the government, Krispy Kreme was telling you to, all the late night shows, Stephen Colbert were all telling you to do. Everybody, you get a free hot dog if you get a free donut it was just everywhere. It was constant propaganda. Think about January 6th. How many times have you heard that date? It's emblazoned on your mind. January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. And then you ask a young person what year we founded, they don't know. So I just like that he's putting so many impressions of it here. The 1776 Commission. Like, you will learn this. You should know this. By the way, it's got an end date, which is great. Look at this, self-deleting. After 2 years, the 1776 Commission shall terminate. Great. We don't want to create more permanent government. More money, more roles that never end. Then there's this Section 5 additional patriotic education measures. Each educational institution that receives federal funds for a fiscal year shall hold an educational program on the United States Constitution on September 17th of such year for the students served by the educational institution, including by verifying compliance with each educational institution that receives federal funds. So they're like, basically, if you're getting federal funds for your school, you have to have a Constitution Day. I'm going to scroll down and see. I don't think, yeah, this is sort of the legalese at the end. I don't have to, we can stop there. Rodney says, I think that termination clause is Elon Musk's input. Maybe. I like that. I like that he's like, even with Doge, he's like, go in, the Department of Government Efficiency, tell us what we have to cut, and then get rid of yourselves. And then you're done. And then it's over. Surly Unicorn, maybe bring back civics. That would be great, right? Sunset clauses should be in all laws, says John. Yes. Skillet. Hey, Skillet. Good to see you. Skillet Actual became a new member. You've been a member before. I know. I recognize you. We're doing another book club. I haven't picked the date yet, Skillet, but we're doing in February. I'm going to pick a date towards the end of the month, but we're going to read Amusing Ourselves to Death, which is something Mystery Chris recommended. You guys, whenever I read through these executive orders, my voice gets a little hoarse by the end. That was a lot of reading, but I'm glad we sat and read it together. Hopefully, if you hadn't had a chance to read it yet, maybe you're driving, wherever you're listening to this, maybe you're washing dishes, whatever you're doing, you got to read through it with us, so you have a better idea of what's in it. And if you know people on the left who are up in arms about everything that's happening and talking about what the media has told them about these executive orders, maybe send them this video and say, hey, you can hear what's in it. Maybe not. Maybe it's a little too harsh. Maybe I'm a little too harsh for them in this particular video. So just send them the EO itself. Give them the link to the EO and say, read this. Good grief. How do I join book club? So if you're on Ye Oldie Facebook, we have a Facebook group called Deprogrammed Book Club. I'll make the announcement in there. If you're not, I'll make the announcement. You're here on YouTube, so I'll also put up an announcement on the community tab. And basically, you just need to shoot me an email. We're still old school. We don't have a whole system yet. Just send me an email at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com and say, I want the next book club link. I want to be in the next one, maybe. And I'll make sure you get the link. And it's a private link. We talked about maybe one day we'll make them public, but right now it's kind of fun to have these private video conversations with people about the books we're doing. So Adam Worrell is he's one of the, what would I call you, Adam? You're a warden over at the book club on Facebook. I'm kidding. A moderator, an enforcer. You'll see Adam's friendly face over there. Yes, deprogrammedpod@gmail.com. And thank you, Robert. He put the email up on the screen. Thank you, Randy. I think I have that one on my list already. Book club recommendation, The Dying Citizen by Victor Davis Hanson. I'll have to check. If not, I'll add it. I've got a long list. We decided to start with this year with one of Mystery Chris's recommendations. He's been recommending this book to me for years. So it was like, okay, we're doing it. We're reading it. And he said it's not too long. So it should be fun. Hey, Texas Sheep Lady. John, always enjoy Victor Davis Hanson's news segments. Okay, guys, I think I'm gonna, drink some water. I gotta go drink some water. I think we're gonna take off. I'm very happy with these EOs. Not much else to say about them other than praise God and thank you, Trump voters. And thank you, everyone who said anything about this evil in the past few years, who's spoken out against it in any way, who's taken a stand for truth and for goodness. Like, thank you. And I kind of, some days I can't believe that this is all real, that we got that, they let him be elected. I really thought that wouldn't happen. I was like, there's no way they're going to let him win. And I'm also really grateful that he's doing a lot of the stuff he said he was going to do. He's doing it no matter what they call him. It's so he's in this stage of, I don't really care, Margaret, which is great. That's where we all need to be right now. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I think we showed this clip, or maybe I watched it on the bullpen. It was JD Vance in his conversation about illegal immigration with this journalist. I forget her name, Margaret something. And JD Vance just he's kind of like Tom Homan, the Borders are. He's just very matter of fact, which is the way you have to it's the way you have to be with people who are trying to manipulate you, especially woke people, especially I would say a lot of times it's woke women. It's not always women, sometimes it's men as well, but they try and use this sort of emotional manipulation a lot. You know what I'm talking about. During the COVID years, they tried to say you're horrible people and you're grandma killers, and so if you don't do what we want. And right now they're trying to say, you're horrible people if you agree with deporting criminals, illegal aliens who are violent offenders, that somehow you're horrible people, and they try to emotionally manipulate you. And you can't give them an inch. You can't let them do that. And so here, let me just show you this clip. In case we didn't watch it, it might have been on the bullpen where we shared it. Okay. We'll end with this because this is just great. And this is the attitude we need to have.
When you talked to us in August, you said, I don't think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember.
No. Why? This is some kind of propaganda. Look at this crap. I don't want to see you telling me what to think about this, New York Post. I just want to see the clip. I just want to see the clip. How hard is it? This is what happened to YouTube, is you can never find what you want anymore because hold on. Okay, here we go. I found one. They always put these authoritative sources. They're like, you must want to see this. No, I don't. I just want to see the clip. So this is a shortened version. So she was basically saying, these refugees have all been vetted. And he's like, no, they haven't. I mean, we're told that they're vetted, but they're not. And he specifically mentions one of these illegal aliens, these so-called refugees, who was that the Biden administration said was vetted, who ended up planning this terrorist attack. And he mentions this guy. And he's like, so clearly they're not being properly vetted. We need to reevaluate the whole system. And this is the bit that this is the best. Here
My primary concern as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that we know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people are vetted.
Good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who played a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted. And many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly, he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted. And because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country. And I think most Americans agree with me.
I love it. She's like making excuses for this guy. They said he was vetted. And then he planned a terrorist attack. And she's like, well, but that's a very particular case. She's trying to come up with some reason why that's okay. And he's like, he just shuts it down. I don't really care, Margaret. Like, they said he was vetted and he wasn't, clearly. I don't really care, Margaret. That's the energy that we need for the next 4 years. No matter what names they call you, what lies they say, they try to make you feel bad about caring about truth. They try to make you feel bad for caring about good and the most amount of good. Like, they try and make you, it's a psychopath's tactic for an evil ideology to try and accuse the people who are against it of being evil. And when they do that to you, if they are agents for that and they are speaking that and they are trying to malign your character and trying to tell you you're a bad person, you don't have empathy and all this stuff, you need to have that energy of like, I don't really care, Margaret. That's it. That's what we're doing these 4 years. I love it. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for hanging out. Margaret's taking over the name Karen, says John. I saw something in here from Feisty Octopus, all the way from the Netherlands. Feisty Octopus, good to see you again. Feisty Octopus says, bye, Keri. After listening to your righteous outrage, I feel nourished. Oh, that makes me so happy. I just love feeling like I'm getting to hang out with you all the way over in the Netherlands during this chat. So I'm glad you were here. Okay, good grief. Let me give you some advice. I wish I were as confident and well-spoken. When I get called a racist, I get upset. I think here's some advice, take it or leave it. I think this absolutely helps. You know that you're not a racist. Okay, you know who you are. Whatever the lie is that someone's trying to put on you, you know you're not that thing. And whatever they say, it doesn't matter. They can't change reality. It's like them saying gravity doesn't exist. Okay, say that all you want to. It does exist. I'm going to keep going about my day. So if they call you those things, it doesn't matter. Let it wash off of you, because it doesn't change what you are. And in the Bible, there's this scripture about how Jesus says, if the world hates you, remember the world hated me first. They said horrible things about Jesus. Like, you're going to, if the only perfect example of man was called horrible things and lied about and defamed and attacked and ultimately killed, and he was the only example of a perfect human, Like, then what do you think is going to happen? You're going to be maligned. You're going to be defamed. You're going to have evil is, if you are trying to do good and follow truth, your evil is going to come after you. It will. And you just have to let it roll off. The truth doesn't care. The truth doesn't care about that stuff. The insults that hurt over time, if you let go of that, of what other people think, I think that's tied to this thing that we all struggle with, in to some degree or another, of still caring what people think about us. And maybe that comes with age. I don't know how old you are, but I just don't care anymore. I really don't care, Margaret. I really don't care, Margaret, what you think of me, because I know what I am. God knows what I am. My friends and family know what I am. And so if you have the wrong idea of me, I'm sorry, and it sucks. I'm sorry. But, you know, I'm not concerned with trying to force you to come around to what I am is not dependent on what you believe. That's a better way of putting it. Do you know how the people who are really heavy into trans ideology, gender ideology, they care very much about whether you call them their preferred pronouns, and they care very much if you don't go along and pretend that like a man is a woman. Like they care very much. Why? Because it's a facade, because it's not real. It's not true. It depends on you buying into it and speaking it too. It's not truth. Truth doesn't need the validation of other people. They need the validation of other people because they're pushing an untruth. So I don't know if that makes sense or if that helps you, but it doesn't matter what they think. Truth doesn't care. And the insults that hurt the most, I think once you get over caring what people think about you, you'll start to filter out and get rid of those, that you'll get rid of all of that that kind of hurt feelings and stuff about stuff that doesn't matter. Like when they have the wrong opinion of you, that doesn't matter. You'll get rid of that. And then what you'll be left with, this is when it gets really good. You can start to figure out what the insults that hurt the most are the ones that have some truth to them. And then you can start to deal with that. You're like, why did that bother me so much? You know, oh, there might be some truth to that one, right? Like, and then you can start to address your flaws. You know, does that make sense? I hope so. I hope it helps. Good Grief says, I'm working on my core of strength and confidence, but this helps. Well, good. And I don't know if you're a believer or not, but even if you're not a believer, there's a lot of Bible verses about this kind of stuff. You can even go online and just look up, you know, Bible verses about truth, Bible verses about strength, about what is unchanging. And there's other things you can read too. And it's just, you know, I go to the Bible first now usually, but there's all kinds of, you know, this is something you can find across all kinds of writing, literature, because you're going to find truth in lots of places, not just in the Bible, because it's truth. So people can see it and they write about it, even if they're not believers. Yes, Robert, it helps to smile. They freak out when you don't get mad. They do. And if they can see it truly doesn't bother you, oh, it's like their magic bullets didn't work. It's like their smoke pellets didn't work. You know, if you're just like, okay, you think I'm a racist, okay, you know, I'm sorry you think that. It's not my concern what you think. Good Grief says, I live in San Francisco. Oh, well, yeah, because you're in an area that's heavily woke Orthodox, right? It's woke Orthodox there, kind of like Austin. I'm outside of Austin, so I'm in what is known as real Texas, and it's not as prevalent here. You will find woke people here, but not like in San Francisco. Okay, I'm really wrapping it up. You guys, I had fun hanging out with you today. Thanks for being here. If you like the video, please hit like. That helps with the algorithm so the videos reach more people. If you have questions or comments, leave those in the comment section below. And if you are in Texas and you're coming to the Deprogrammed meetup tomorrow in Grapevine, I will see you there at 12:30. I'll put it on the screen one more time before I go. Here's the info. And I may or may not have these little dogs with me, this loud doggies. We'll have a good time either way. Tomorrow at 12:30 at the Sweet Paris Creperie in Southlake, Texas, we're doing a deprogrammed meetup to coincide with the Nitty McPurley knitting retreat. And I hope to see you guys there. Okay, take care. I'll see you later. Bye.